War in Israel, war in Ukraine. What do we need to know? Hi, I'm Pastor Marty. This is the Afternoon Drive. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Once you are, smack the bell, click the word all. That gives you notifications, allegedly, of every time I'm on here, giving a rant, ravings, and my flawless reasonings. Hey, and once you are subscribed and when you get done watching this video, please like and share this video to all of your social media platforms. That's how we get the word out that we're here. Welcome to the Afternoon Drive. So there are liberals right now who are looking at those of us on the right because of our support of Israel saying, aha, see, this so-called phony position that you have taken with Ukraine, that you don't want to fund the war in Ukraine because somehow you have become the party of peace and you're making us look like the warmongers when in reality you're still warmongers. It's just you want a different war. Let me explain this very succinctly, very directly, and we're going to get straight to the point. The reason I support Israel is not necessarily because I support political Israel. What do I mean by political Israel? Look, Netanyahu, am I saying that he doesn't do things to stroke fires and make certain things happen that fit within a narrative that he wants? Of course he does. Or let me quote Chunk Yogurt from the Young Turks. Of course he does. We understand that. Look, we start looking at some of the things that the United States is involved in around this planet, and we begin to realize how much of it we provoked, we caused, we made happen. Like what's going on in Syria right now. Like the fact that we have toppled regimes and we have created so much instability, I should say, be a better way of saying it, instability in the Middle East. And all of that is done on purpose because we've got a military-industrial complex that this is the grift and this is how they make money. So we replaced war in Iraq, war, over there with, our focus on what's happening in Ukraine. And I'm going to get to that in great detail. You're not going to want to miss this assessment of what's really happening in Ukraine and the fact that they have actually already lost the war. That's just not being reported to you. We'll get to that in a minute. But let's stick with Israel for a moment. There were attacks over the weekend. Netanyahu has declared war on Hamas. And yeah, the casualty rate's going up. And I know that there are those, even those who claim to be liberal Jews here in the United States, that this is awful, this is terrible, the Gaza Strip, and Netanyahu can't do this. Time out, time out, time out, time out. As a Christian, as a student of the Word of God, and I know some of you don't want to hear this argument, but I'm going to explain it anyway. Genesis chapter 12. God laid it out to Abraham. Abraham, the father of the Jewish nation. Genesis chapter 12. Read it for yourself. God clearly outlines the land that he is giving to the descendants of Abraham, i.e., the Jews. The land that is Israel was given to these people by God. It is theirs. We understand that Palestinians, Palestine, Arabs, Muslims overtook this land throughout the years and the centuries, and it was given back to the Jews in 1948. And since then, there has been political unrest, there has been military unrest. Got it. You're going to have to face a few facts, though. You can call us Zionists, call us whatever you want, but you're going to have to face a few facts, though. The fact is, they have an actual biblical record, which is considered historically accurate, a biblical record as to the deed and the rights to the territory. It's theirs. It belongs to them. They can have national sovereignty. It is the problem is when other countries, i.e. the United States, get involved and tell them play nice and share with the other maniacs over there who want to kill you. who want to behead you, who have made it clear in their declarations and in their constitutions that their end game is to erase Israel, to erase the Jews from the map. You don't negotiate with that. You can't play nice with that. Israel is the only working democracy at all over there. They wear suits. They've been educated. I'm sorry. If I don't have good faith in guys that are still wearing turbans, carrying, those, half moon shape swords, and they just want to behead everybody and make YouTube live videos out of it. I'm sorry if I have a hard time wrapping my head around how do we negotiate and how do we work out, amicable, peaceable agreements with people whose mentality is still 4th century barbarianism. Get it now? This is why it is important that we stand with Israel. Now, I could get really biblical and say that according to Genesis chapter 12, God did say, I will bless them that bless thee, I will curse them that curse thee. I will ask this obvious question: how did it work out for Hitler when he decided to, make it his life's mission to eradicate the planet of Jews? How'd that work out? How'd that work out when Egypt tried to eradicate the Jews? How did it work out when any nation has ever tried to literally, physically eviscerate and remove Israel? Again, whether you believe in God or not, that's not the point. I'm telling you that there is a biblical argument for this. That's why we stand with and support Israel. They have the right to protect themselves, their national sovereignty. Period. Does that mean that I agree with all of their political ideologies and what Netanyahu is up to? No, it doesn't. But it does mean in this, and you now have Iran taking a victory lap that they helped make this happen. That's not propaganda. That's Iran. And geez, what did the Biden administration just do? Oh yeah, release $6 billion back to Iran. I heard some liberals on social media and here on YouTube say, oh, Israel supposedly got this, the best intelligence community in the world, and they didn't see this coming. I'm sorry. The United States gave a nuclear power that's on the terror watch list. Iran has been declared an absolute terrorist state. We give them $6 billion and we didn't think that they were going to make trouble with it? What? They were just going to take care of all the people in nursing homes and have a free lunch program for the kiddies in school? That's what they're going to do with it. You utopian libs, you're going to get all of us killed. You're going to just eradicate the human race because of your colossal naiveness and just inability to deal in planet reality. So, the one and only real working democracy in that region is Israel. You have Saudi Arabia ready to go into a peace agreement with Israel. Now, I could get biblical prophetic in this, and we could talk about end time prophecy and what some of these alliances actually mean. I'm not going there. You can hear me teach on that on a Sunday. But that's why we stand with Israel. Now, as far as Ukraine is not a democracy. Never has been. Not going to be. It's not a democracy. And what we're doing right now, this money that's going over there, is not about defending Ukraine. We are simply making the oligarchs wealthy, and some of that money is being kicked back. It's a money laundering. And yeah, we're able to sell things, armaments, etc., to Ukraine, and that keeps the wheels rolling of the military-industrial complex. But Tim Pool, who's got his own podcast, very popular, was recently a guest on with Patrick Bet-David on his podcast. And Tim Pool outlined incredibly insightful what's really happening in Ukraine, to the point I was so blown away and impressed by it. I'm not even going to try and put this in my own words. I'm going to let Tim Pool explain exactly what's happening in Ukraine.
But more importantly, when I pulled up the battle map a couple weeks ago of Ukraine, I was shocked because I wasn't tracking the on-the-ground stuff with Ukraine as much. I was shocked to discover that Russia won. Because they've been telling us over and over and over again that we're winning. Russia's decimated. They're conscripting people. They're in panic. And there's these videos of like the Ukrainian soldier flicking the cigarette and being like, "Love Ukraine," or whatever. And then you pull up the battle map and you're like, wait, so Russia secured the entire Donbass land bridge from the Donbass, the land bridge into Crimea, which was their stated goal. So I feel like every story coming out saying we are winning and let's go. And I'm like, Russia wanted to control access to Crimea. It's their access to the Mediterranean, through the Black Sea, through the Bosphorus, into the Mediterranean, because that's how they ship a lot of their oil and gas. And what the threat was to them was that if Ukraine joins NATO and the EU, it cuts off Crimea. Well, first of all, before all this in 2014, before Crimea was basically taken by Russia, and they had a referendum, call it whatever you want, the threat Russia's facing is we have the Sevastopol base. We transport a lot of our energy through here. If Ukraine falls to the EU and NATO, we lose access to the Mediterranean. We can't allow that. So first thing they do, they walk out of their naval base in Sevastopol and say, we're already here, actually, quote unquote referendum, take it. With the expansion of the war, they needed to secure access into Crimea outside of just the actual bridge over water, which we saw bombed not that long ago. Now I'm looking at this map, and we have it right here. Wow, Russia's secured land access into Crimea, which was my understanding was their stated goal. They're pushing past towards Odessa now, which is insane. And when I talk to neocon types, pro-war establishment types on the left or liberal Democrat, whatever you want to call it, they keep saying no. Vladimir Putin wants Poland. No, Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
And I was like, what strategic value does Vladimir Putin have right now economically? Look, you want to make the argument that Putin's 20-year plan is to invade Poland? Fine. But right now, what we're dealing with, this makes total sense in terms of bringing oil into the Mediterranean, competing with on the oil market. And you telling me that Vladimir Putin is a comic book villain who wants to take over the world means nothing. It says nothing about his strategy, nothing about where he's placing his troops. When I look at this, I'm like, oh, right. He wants the land bridge into Crimea to secure it so that you can't kick him out. He's gotten it. That seems like a military goal. It seems like Ukraine's lost this one, and we're dumping money down the toilet.
Dude, you just almost like you are like a battlefield general in Ukraine. You know this inside out. Is this something that you've been following for 18 months or
to be
10
fair,
years?
I was there just before the coup happened in 2014 or 20. So I went there in 2013. I produced a couple documentaries for Vice breaking down what was going on, and I talked to a lot of people there. I actually got to. I wasn't there when they toppled the statue of Lenin, but I got there literally right afterwards and saw the statue ripped down, and people were smashing it with hammers. It was a crazy sight to see. But this goes back to the Qatar-Turkey pipeline. I'm sure you guys are familiar. Are you familiar with this?
Yes.
So the United States, the West, wanted a pipeline from Qatar up through Syria and Turkey into Europe to displace the Gazprom gas monopoly. Syria said explicitly, we are allied with Russia. We will not allow you to do this. In fact, they were going to counter this pipeline by having Iran build a pipeline and run that instead, strengthening the Eastern energy monopoly, whatever you want to call it. It was explicitly reported, I'm amazed, this is in The Guardian, that in 2009, the CIA said, we will destroy Syria. We will overthrow them. Lucky for us, a few years later, a civil war breaks out. We're on the side of the rebels because this is a country that said, we will not allow you to build a pipeline. All of this then connects into, you have the Gazprom gas monopoly, which its pipeline runs through Ukraine. All of a sudden, this energy company pops up in Ukraine where we've got a former CIA director, Hunter Biden, on the board. And now everything we're learning with the investigation into the Bidens, into Hunter Biden, Devin Archer testifying, Hunter Biden calls D.C. and says, we need help. Joe Biden then flies out, says, fire the prosecutor. You know, I'll simplify this for you. Mykola Zlochevsky, the founder of Burisma, it's an energy company. We have massive interests in building these energy companies. He is accused of corruption. He is under investigation by Viktor Shokin, the prosecutor in Ukraine. He flees the country after his assets are frozen. Joe Biden comes in and says, oh, the prosecutor's corrupt, fire him. Conveniently, right after his son calls D.C. saying, I need help because they're feeling this pressure. Several months later, Shokin finally resigns, and guess what? Mykola Zlochevsky returns to the country. Now, hold on. I thought what? This guy is accused of corruption, but he comes back. Joe Biden says at the CFR meeting that we got in someone who was solid, someone who was solid, who cleared this guy. Guess what? When Donald Trump made that phone call saying what's going on with this, homie fled the country again.
Yep.
Because he knew the investigations were back on. There is absolute corruption, and the fascinating thing is that all of this is in the media. You see it reported. But my favorite example of how the media is a spattering of CIA, FBI, whatever you want to call it, and sometimes real journalists, is just after the 2016 election, Politico reported that Ukrainian officials interfered in the U.S. election to assist Hillary Clinton. Politico has this. You can pull this up. Then, about a year or two later, Politico reported that very story they reported was Russian disinformation without retracting their own story that this has been happening. So I could talk 50 billion years about all this stuff, but I think my point.
You know what? That's the thing people don't realize about Syria, which Bobby Kennedy was onto, and that's where I found out about that gas pipeline was for Bobby Kennedy years ago in like 2017. I'm like, why is there a war, and why does the CIA want to overthrow Assad? And it turns out that's why we got in bed with. So right now we're in bed with Nazis in Ukraine, legit Hitler Nazis, but in Syria we were in bed with Al Qaeda and Al Nusra and the people
and
who
ISIS.
and ISIS, our sworn enemies. Go ahead.
Just to add, the Canadian Parliament gave a standing ovation to a Nazi.
To a Nazi.
Right.
Hitler
98-year-old.
No background check.
And so people don't realize that's what all that Assad was. And Tulsi Gabbard stood up and told the truth about that. And that's why they had to smear her as a Russian agent and all that stuff. Because whoever tells the truth about our foreign policy when the game that's being played, they immediately get called an Assadist, or you get called a Putin puppet, or they would call you a Saddam puppet or a traitor to the country. And they're doing the same thing. They're doing it in Iraq. They're doing it in Libya. They're doing it in Syria. They're doing it in Ukraine. It's all the same shit, and people don't wake up. I can't believe that people who saw them do Iraq, and then nobody really looked into Libya, and then they saw them do Syria. They got tricked into Syria again, and the same game in Ukraine. I can't believe they're falling for this over and over.
Here's what it is. Here's what I'm noticing with the trend. They come in saying, I think they will believe us for a year.
Yeah, that's all they need.
And then that's all we need.
Yep.
And with the year, we'll sell enough supplies to
Yep.
make money. And
You're
then
right.
all of a sudden, that 81 on Democrat support goes to 52.
That's right.
Republican goes 56-35. And then the Independent goes 57-44. And by far, the best meme I've seen as a person who's an entrepreneur. I support small business owners, especially some of them that want to work from home, do something part-time. There isn't anybody that's done a better job. You know, Rob, if you have this, if you can pull this up, please. I want to make sure the audience sees this. He is the GOAT of working from home. Last month, I made $40 billion working from home.
That's Tim Pool. You ought to check out his podcast. Also, you should check out Patrick Bet David. You can find him either as PBD or Valuetainment. Outstanding, insightful, and spot on. And that is exactly why we are not going to, and we have to stand against this continual funding of Ukraine. All we're doing is stroking the fires of World War III.